This is Breaking Down Security, and I'm Brian Brake. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello, hello.
Hey, what's up? I'm back from vacation.
I know. Yeah. So Haiti, huh?
Haiti and Jamaica and Cozumel, which, we did a cruise, with, we were on Royal Caribbean. It was a big ship, the Oasis of the Seas. It was a crazy huge boat. There were 10,000 people on that boat.
Dang, that's bigger than the city that I live in.
It's bigger than Elgin. Yeah, that's you're in the burbs there, so.
Elgin's probably bigger than that now, but when I grew up in Elgin, it was about 5,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I both towns I grew up in had less than 5,000 people. You probably could have fit all of both towns on the ship and still had plenty of room. So it was a fun time, though. If you ever want to go on a cruise, I guess those Royal Caribbean ships are good for it. They got a lot of stuff there to do. So, all right, Mr. Betcher, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, I got an email from you, Mr. Brake, about talking about BSIMM. And I was like, what in the world is BSIMM? It's interesting. Well, it turns out it's building security in, right?
That's right.
Building it in your applications from the beginning. Because we all, we've been talking about this for a while. Tacking it on at the end just doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mentioned it during our talk with Bill Sempf, a week ago in podcast time. And, he didn't even want to go there because it was just really complicated. And that's what got me interested in wanting to go through BSIMM and understand what it was. So this is the sixth iteration of BSIMM. Actually, to give you a little history, which you can find inside the PDF, thankfully, it was created by Cigital, which is the company I think Gary McGraw started. And BSIMM was back in 2008. 2008, and it was an idea. Other than other best practice models, which I know Bill is cringing when I said that, they use, like you should do this, or this is how you're supposed to do it. This is more like almost like a Verizon data breach report, where it says, okay, they've taken this industry, they've interviewed all these people, all these companies, and said, okay, do you do X, Y, and Z? And then they say, okay, out of these 78 companies, 40% do blah, 30% do blah, and they have different levels. And there's 4 different topics that they cover, which are deployment, intelligence, security, and SSDL touch points, which are software, security, development, lifecycle stuff, and governance. So those are the 4 topics they have, and they have 3 levels in each one, and that describes your maturity level. The more mature you are, the higher the level you get.
That's right, and I guess the idea behind it is they've taken these companies that they believe do security well, and these are firms that develop software. So they believe that they develop secure software in general, and they, I guess, interviewed them and scored them on how well they do on each of these, sections, if you will, and basically took all the data and aggregated it or whatever, and came up with this report.
Yeah.
Now, it's like, to achieve security, and I'm doing the air quotes when I say security, to achieve security, because you can't be totally secure ever in these applications that are developed. It requires an infinite level of effort, right? So you can never get to infinity, and you never can develop a completely secure product is the idea. So, and you have a limited number of resources. Mm-hmm. Where do you put your effort? And I think that's the idea behind BSIMM is you know you can expend a certain level of effort in building a secure application. Where do you do it?
Yep.
Okay. Are you based on these 47 firms that apparently do it well? Are you negligent in this area, and are you focusing too much on another area?
Yeah, and you can also use BSIMM if you're in a specific industry to see how well you're doing according to those industries. So let's say you are a bank. Some of the people they interviewed for BSIMM are like Bank of America, Capital One, Citigroup, Comerica. If you're a technology company, you might compare your industry vertical against EMC, Qualcomm, PayPal, Nokia. They have retail like Home Depot, I don't know, there's Lenovo, those kinds of things. They also have consultancies like, there's those healthcare folks like McKesson. You've got the advisory board, and there's Vanguard, and there's other companies like that too. So, they break it down by industry verticals as well, and that gives you an idea. The reason I said it was like the Verizon data breach report is you can compare yourself against people maybe in your own industry to see how you stack up against them, which can be important because you need to know if you're actually keeping a pace with your competitors.
Right, and I think it's important to note that these are people that come into those firms that are not part of the firm, and they basically interview all levels of your application security program. They interview developers, they interview QA, they interview people in charge of security for development, and they score them independently. So, as an executive in that particular company may think that they're using automated tools with tailored rules, right? But actually, the interviews prove that maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a good report for them as well to verify that they're actually doing these things that they think they are. Or, a new CEO or CISO comes in and he says, well, I want to do these things. Well, if you're not doing them, it does you no good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They got to make sense, so if your CISO says that, these things don't make any sense, then, this is a good way to find out if what you're doing in your own company is worth doing, because they break these down. Like we were going to go through all 4 of these, but we figured out that the podcast might go a little long. So we're going to work on just one group. And it's kind of telling because if you go and you're following along with us on your BSIMM version 6, we're going to be looking at pages 18 and 19, which talk about the deployment portion. The deployment portion, of course, is, let me scroll back up here. I'm going to look at, so it practices that interface with traditional network security and software maintenance organizations. Going to talk about things like software configuration, maintenance, and other environmental issues that have a direct impact on software security. So, application security, we've been talking to Bill about this. It's become a really important thing. So, if you're trying to figure out a way to know if you're doing a good job, this is, these levels of in the BSIMM for deployment will actually tell you if you're actually doing a good job in the industry or as a whole. So,
penetration testing. Let's just go through it. In deployment is the first part of that, and level 1 would be use external penetration testers to find problems. So if you're not doing that, then you're in the 20% that don't. According to this study, 88% use external penetration testers for their applications.
So the 78 companies, 88% of them use pen testers, which a lot of them in that group probably fall into some kind of compliance framework that require the use of regular penetration testing, whether it be financial for those, or like PCI requires pen testers. So if you're in an industry vertical that has that, you're looking pretty good.
Well, I think it's important to note, though, that this is for development of applications. So they don't necessarily have to be in a compliance framework for their application. For example, if you're under PCI for your for the application that you build or the application that you use.
Yeah. Say
you buy that application from another vendor, that vendor may not be under PCI.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. I know that for things like SOC 2, you also have to do pen tests and you have to do code audits and make sure that third parties are looking at your code too. So that's also another method that you might need to have for those. It's interesting though, because it says 88% use pen testers to find problems. And the way this falls is as the more mature you are at code audits and in the deployment schedule, the more mature your organization is supposed to be. So really, a lot of these companies are doing the bare minimum. I mean, the first bullet is using pen testers to find problems. Okay, that's great. But once you feed the results to defect management and your mitigation system, that drops from 88 to 60%, which, and it only gets worse from there. I found that, you rarely go up once you go to level 2 or level 3. It drops off pretty quickly. Using pen test tools internally, which is another 60%. So you've got a lot of people using, Burp Suite, Nmap, Nexpose, Veracode, code analysis tools, that kind of thing. So level 1, on a lot of these are pretty good with regard to those things.
I mean, it says 60% have. I mean, to me, this says we have people who can use or who do offensive security on staff.
Yeah, right. We have red teamers, or we have people who are blue teamers who are adept at using TAC tools or understanding TAC tools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, only 60% do that.
Yeah.
And these are of firms that do a pretty good job in application security.
True. Yeah.
Right.
And this one's interesting because once you hit level 2, it's like you're separating the men from the boys at this point, because everybody's happy with doing the pen test and setting out the results to their, ITIL, change management, defect management folks to get these fixed. And, oh great, Joe Bob Billy's got, Nmap and he's using that on the network, or he's got Burp Suite, and he's testing web applications. It's giving the pen testers information that seems to stymie a lot of companies, and apparently that's kind of a thing. Because once you get up to the level 2 tier of penetration testing, only 26% of those 80 companies actually give the pen testers enough information to actually do a proper pen test. So,
so you're talking white box pen tests. Only 26% do white box.
I would imagine that's the case. Only 26% actually do white box, which you get a better pen test with. I mean, you can't just set a pen tester in there blind and go, okay, break it, So yeah. I wonder if the 88% in level 1 is actually correct. If pen testers are they may be finding problems, but are they finding quality problems? So I'm wondering what the 88% is actually indicative of, if it's just the fact they find problems or if they find actually like debilitating problems.
Right. Another level 2, schedule periodic pen test for application coverage.
Yeah.
So if they add a new feature, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you have to do regular pen tests, the vast majority of them don't do regular periodic pen tests. Now, of course, that may not be applicable to their environment. I mean, if you're
again, it's for a piece of software, not for the organization as a whole. It's for a piece of software that they're developing. You add a new feature, then it should be pen tested, right?
Sure.
That's what this is saying, and only 22% do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and it really depends on periodic because, I mean, technically that's any period of time. So if you did one pen test a year and you did another pen test the next year, technically it's a period of 1 year. But I get what they're talking about. So
Yeah.
it depends on if it's a major change or if it's a minor change.
It's basically tied to a release cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gives you a sanity check, against today's attacks also.
True.
So if you if you have like a schedule, even if you don't do a new release and add a bunch of new features, you'd still want to do that yearly pen test because there are new exploits that come out, all the time.
Yep. I wasn't paying attention to what you were saying there. I was just actually scrolling. No, I'm just kidding. I was actually scrolling back up to see if there's any point where like level 2 or level 3 actually get higher than level 1. But no, it's almost like it is like a pyramid. It continues to dwindle down. So they are very much in the way of you're supposed to do one before you do the other, obviously. So level 3, of course, if you want to be at like the top tier for pen testing, your external pen testers also must perform a deep dive analysis, which also kind of jives with what you get in the level 2, where pen testers get all the available information. Some of the pen tester information you're supposed to give a pen tester for a test is things like source code, network analysis, code audit reports that you get. If they're not getting those on the level 2 side, they're definitely not getting them on level 3. So that's why deep dive analysis are near impossible. It's either because companies don't want to give that code up, or they don't have the logs or the code. They're not doing the code audits to give to the pen testers. So that may be something. So, and
the last one on pen testing is that the pen testers actually develop customized tools for that particular application.
Well, it's your software security group. They mention SSG a lot in this. So your software security group is supposed to be like your platform security folks, your security architect, your internal red or blue teamers that are testing things. So if you have a special Go application, you should be creating tools that will test it's like fuzzing. You need fuzzing tools. So you need to create a fuzzer for your application.
Yep. And next we have the software environment. They use level 1, use application input monitoring.
Now, what is that?
Well, it says the organization monitors the input to its software it runs in order to spot attacks.
Okay, so
basically,
like a WAF?
Yeah, kind of like a WAF.
So a web application has input monitoring.
Yeah.
Okay. And they said only 47% of the companies have that, any kind of monitoring on input coming into an application. I guess that would make sure you didn't have malicious input to an application as well. So WAFs, I don't know, malicious traffic going to an application, that kind of thing.
Right. And then the next is network security basics are in place.
So that'd be like SANS top 20 security controls?
Well, specific for network security. Like you actually have firewalls and those firewalls are up to date, things like that.
Yeah. Let's see. It said the organization provides a solid foundation for software by securing common operation security teams responsible, including patching and firewall maintaining. Doing software security before network security is like putting your pants on before your underwear. Nice. That's nice. So that's pretty good. They seem to be doing pretty good there. 88% of the companies do that. I'm almost afraid to ask which companies don't.
Yeah.
I did see
Home
Depot on there. So I did see Home Depot on there. I did see some other companies that have been hit in the last few years with data breaches and such. So that would make sense. So Publishing installation guides. I'm not sure about that one. Do they mean like the software manual, like, click next, 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 and okay?
Well, to make sure that their QA and their customers actually deploy the software properly, so that you don't get default configurations, things like that, or to help mitigate against them.
Okay. Well, as you can see on the page there, the minute you get to level 2, which is one of the bullets in there, is that it drops to 40%. So that means of the software these people put out, only 40% actually have a guide that says here's how to install it. Now, it doesn't say anything about hardening guides. It just says installation guides. So I got an installation guide with my Cisco switch that says here's how you set it up. Right. Oh, yeah, you probably should have a new password set up, but it doesn't say, okay, you need to harden it by doing this and harden it by doing that. It's just, turn it on, make sure it's plugged in. Here's how to log in. Maybe you should change your password. That's it.
Yeah, that's all it says. I mean, it doesn't go into hardening in this particular study.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's... Yeah, I guess that's something you have to hope that your pen testers or your software security group, sets up and makes sure that everything is done properly for you like that.
And next is code signing. I know that you can get your code, like if you develop a Microsoft application or a Windows application, you can get your software signed by Microsoft.
That's right, and what is that? A couple of years ago, you could use a certificate from Adobe and get any of your software signed by Adobe. Is that right? Yeah. They actually had some signing certs that got borrowed, and you could sign it, and it would be ran on any box because it was signed by Adobe. So, am I career limiting by bringing up all the companies on this report that have been owned? Is that a career limiting thing? Maybe I should. Know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's definitely career.
Maybe don't call them out by name.
Okay,
that's a good practice.
That's always a good thing. Yeah.
Some companies.
Yes, that rhyme with Adobe. Yes. So, all right. Yeah. So code signing is good because obviously you don't want somebody running unsigned code or your code unsigned on a system because it's a non-repudiation thing. You can't code outside of your control. Can be Trojaned, can have malware added to it, that kind of thing. And 32% of companies that surveyed use those controls. So level 3, you use code protection.
Yeah, stuff like ASLR, address space layout randomization, data execution prevention. We've talked about those before on the cast. Things like that to ensure, that. Well, layout randomization, that would be, protection against fuzzing, stuff like that.
Yeah, you might also use code obfuscation. I know some companies use like JavaScript code obfuscation to make it harder to reverse engineer code if it's been given out for intellectual property things. So you might find ways to make it impossible to reverse engineer your code. Yeah,
and only 13%. Are at level 3 with code protection.
Well, that's a difficult thing, though, because, not only do you have to have a developer who is intimate with the code, you actually have to either buy software that will do it for you and still allow the code to work properly, or you have somebody in there putting in random noise. So, you really need to have like really skilled developers to make that happen. So I can understand why that would only be 13%.
And it depends on what type of code it is and whether you have, whether you feel that you need to protect your application against those types of exploits, right? Yeah. So it might be pretty legitimate that you don't use code protection in that manner.
That's true. Yeah, all the code I make is sufficiently obfuscated. Even I don't understand it. So there's that. So
there is that.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So, and then the last one for level 3 on the software environment is using application behavior monitoring and diagnostics, and that's just more monitoring of the application against, if it's supposed to, make the light blink green and it doesn't blink green, that's anomalous behavior, and you want stuff in your code or be monitoring your code to make sure that your application works as suggested.
Yeah, and just reading the explanation of that, it could be that your application logs that behavior properly so that it can be acted upon.
Yeah.
Yep.
And only 6% of the 78 companies do that kind of thing. So if you're in a company industry vertical, and they're actually spider charts for these things, and they show, according to, I believe, industry, what how you would stack up against like an industry as a whole. So if you're in banking, you can say, okay, yeah, we do X, Y, and Z. Or we're all the way up to level 2.5, so that puts us better than 78% of the organizations. So if it's worth it to buy that brand new, Blinky box, that kind of that's the whole idea behind BSIMM. It's kind of a a ruler, if you will, for your company. So the last one, of course, is kind of in my bailiwick: configuration and vulnerability management. It's kind of what I do at my organization. Level 1, you create or interface with incident response. So if something goes wrong, you want to make sure that you have an incident response to various things. Like if your application starts DDoSing organizations, or, you kind of have to think worst case on that, and then prepare for the worst case.
Right. And a lot of the participants do that, over 90%.
Yeah, good on them.
Next is identify software defects found in operation monitoring and feed them back to development. Okay, so it's basically making sure that these particular defects get back into the pipeline.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so they have a testing or a QA department, and their QA department or testing department actually talks to the developers. Okay. They make it sound so fancy there. Identify software defects found in operations monitoring. Yeah. Okay, they got bugs. They find them in testing. They put out the software, but say, okay, we've got X, Y, and Z. We'll fix it in the next Kanban or whatever. And, then... So 94% of the 78, which company or which 2 companies don't do that? That's what I want to know. Because
again, it may depend on what type of software we're talking about.
I think all software need testers and QA. Not letting
I don't think it's just that they don't have QA. It's that these any defects that are that sort of accumulate or make themselves known at deployment or after deployment. It may hinge on logging. It may hinge on logging. Maybe it does have a defect. It's just not known yet, and it doesn't get back to the development team properly. But yeah, it hinges on the pipeline largely. Are these defects getting documented and go back into development properly?
That's true.
It's like ITIL, right?
Yeah, it depends on the maturity of your software lifecycle. If you're just getting an email or a instant message from a QA tester and goes, hey, here's something broke, or do you have like a meeting every week that says, okay, here are our trouble tickets, here are the issue tickets that came up, these are the ones we need to fix. Oh yeah, we found these when we were doing our our burn, our burn, what do they call it? The burnout, burn down. Now it's some kind of testing term. It's like before you release to production, we found these things, they're bad and we can't go to production with these in place, or, oh yeah, we can because we have this workaround, that kind of thing. So yeah, I get that. Okay.
So basically close the loop on these defects, right? Yeah. Make sure they get back and get fixed.
Yep.
Tracking. Level 2, have emergency code-based response.
I'm sorry. I don't know. Let me CMVM.
Quick code changes. Oh, okay. So like if there's a Sev 1 or level 0 type of attack, systems down type things, you have a team of people that can respond to that and be able to deploy code quickly, fix the application, sort of like a red line, right?
Yeah.
You've got your regular development track, but then you've got a red line track in case of emergency.
Yeah, it sounds like DevOps.
DevOps, yeah.
Rapid response team working in conjunction with application owners to study the code, find a resolution, and push a patch into production. Yeah, it sounds almost like DevOpsy, but it's more incident response based. Yeah, wow. Okay. Fire drills don't count. Well-defined processes required. So there's got to be some kind of controls in place to say, okay, do a quick test. Yeah, that doesn't screw up everything else. Push it out.
And you have to have a well-defined process, is what they're saying.
Yeah.
So next is track software bugs. This is still in level 2 in deployment. Track software bugs found in operations through the fix process.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, you've got to have a ticketing system or, something that will allow you to input a problem or input an issue and, discuss and track to completion. So that way you can, use those to do your software management. When you do in your sprints or whatever, you have a system that, shows the to-dos and those kinds of things. So, 78% have that. So.
Not sure how that's different from identify software defects and feed them back to development.
Well, I don't know. Is there a difference between defects and bugs? Maybe we should have asked Bill that. That would have been a great question to ask. Are there differences between defects and bugs? Because obviously BSIMM does make that different. Makes that difference.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right, moving on. That's a question.
Oh, we were doing good. We're like version, level 1.6 out of 2. 2 of our 3 bullets were good, and then develop operations inventory of applications drops from an average of anywhere between 70 to 90% down to 40% of companies. So developing operations inventory of applications. And I'd imagine that means you have to know all the software that is used in your application, whether it be software libraries, bits of code, where's the code that makes this shim run, or where all the the code base is at basically, and what runs inside.
Yeah, it says if a piece of code needs to be changed, operations can reliably identify all of the places where the change needs to be, installed.
Okay, so it's a lot of documentation too. You need to be able to properly document your code so you can say, okay, we need to go here, here, and here to make those changes.
And now on to level 3, which
goodness.
is they're all less than 10%, right? So this is high level stuff here.
Wow.
Fix all occurrences of software bugs found in operations. So only 5% of companies in this particular study actually fix all of the software bugs.
Okay, so that one's kind of misleading. It says, according on page 58, if you're following along, the organization fixes all instances of each software bug found during operations and not just the small number of instances that triggered the bug report. This requires the ability to re-examine the entire code base when new kinds of bugs come to light. One way to approach this is to create a rule set that generalizes a deployed bug into something that can be scanned for using automated code review. Okay, so if so that would be like one of our 24 deadly sins, software sins. If you can know that that's a regularly occurring thing because your developers do that, you can create a filter or something in, say, Veracode or whatever. That's the only one I know.
Right.
So
you're
will
talking
scan for
that
those things.
Those number of bugs that made it all the way through development QA, the application's been deployed, and somebody finds a bug in the software. How does that translate into getting it back into the next release?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and if you know that that's something that's going to happen regularly, like memory leaks, if you know that you're not, handling your memory properly for like a Java application, you can set up a filter that says, okay, maybe per developer, if you know a specific developer does certain things in his code and you know that he's going to make those mistakes, you can set up filters to filter those things out or to look for those things. That might be something to think about.
Enhance the SSDL to prevent software bugs found in operations.
Enhance the software security development lifecycle to prevent software bugs found in operations. That's a lot of words. So where was this one at? Level 3. Experience from operations leads to changes in the SSDL. Okay, so
okay. So based on a particular bug, you might change your process, your development process, right?
Yeah.
Based on that type of feedback.
Yeah, like if operations says it's running slowly, you might have to refactor some code to make sure it's it works better.
Not necessarily refactor the code, but refactor the process of code development to accommodate for those types of bugs. Right.
Oh, yeah, and they're talking about like doing root cause analysis. This works best when root cause analysis pinpoints where the software development lifecycle, error could have been introduced or slipped by uncaught. Okay, so that helps train your employees, make your QA better. Maybe, operation says, oh, yeah, your people need to be spun up on this new way of doing things, so you may end up getting training out of it, that kind of thing.
All right, next is simulate software crisis. So, wow, that's tough going through simulations like that. I mean, you don't have a real crisis, but you simulate one.
Well, those are like tabletop things where you do threat analysis, risk assessments on what could or couldn't happen. What happens if your web application is using a specific cipher instead of another cipher, if it's using RC4 or if it's using V3 instead of TLS.
Well, who has time for that? I guess apparently 8% do. Right.
That means like 7 companies out of the 78 are doing that kind of stuff. So that's pretty bad. So,
well, I mean, again, it's all a measurement. I mean, again, these companies do security well.
Yeah.
And how does your company measure against all of them?
That's true.
Is the idea behind this paper, this report, this whole BSIMM.
Yeah, and software crises aren't like your data center goes down. That's an entirely different type of incident response. So they're quick to mention that in the description in the back. So if the data center burns to the ground, SSG won't be the first responder. So
there you go. And the last one. Operate a bug bounty program.
I can't imagine. It says 4%, so that must mean there's like 1 or 2 companies on them 78 on the front list there that do that. I couldn't find one. Maybe somebody smarter than me can tweet us up and go, X company does that. I'm not sure. So
I mean, how hard is it to just say, okay, we're going to budget, $30,000 for bug bounty. Go.
Dude, no, that stuff, I mean, there's a reason that like Bug Crowd or HackerOne and those, why they're creating these things is because companies don't want to have to deal with the hassle of that and the legalities and making sure. For instance, I got a story, a Bob story. Bob told me yesterday that he'd gotten an email from his support group about a guy. He'd sent an email to the support group, Bob's support group, and said, I have your website is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. And here's a screenshot. So all of a sudden Bob's boss and Bob's boss's boss is like hammering on Bob to find out if this is a real issue or not. And come to find out after several meetings, several $500 meetings in case, that the guy didn't actually do it properly, and it wasn't really a finding. So after several man days worth of hours lost and several $500 meetings where we had 4 or 5 people in a meeting at $100 an hour, you find that that's why they have those bug bounty programs, because it helps separate the wheat from the chaff. I mean, some of these guys are just like doing it for the lulz because they think they know what they're doing. Or
they're just trying to get somebody to bite and say, oh, maybe we do have a problem.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That guy, the guy that sent that email to Bob's company was looking for recognition of some kind. He wanted, he wanted money to stay shut up or whatever. And
or he was scanning the internet and seeing if he could get some quick cash, and it was a false positive, and he didn't even know it.
exactly. And that's
or
why
didn't care.
I really would like I kick myself every time I think about stuff like this, because I had Katie Masuris on for an interview at DerbyCon, but I didn't get her, and I feel like an idiot. Katie, if you listen to the podcast, please contact me. So yeah, I'd love to have her on just to talk about that, the pain in the ass of because you get all types. You get all types, and Bob is tired of wasting time trying to figure those things out, I'd imagine, because he posted it on Facebook the other day about it. So, we only did one section of this. It's really a great little document if you're wanting to, figure out where you need to stack up. Like maybe you're trying to get your vulnerability management program under wrap, under control, or maybe you're trying to create one. This is a good way of figuring out where and what you should be working on to get that maturity in your various sections, like whether it be your deployment for your security stuff, or maybe you're doing governance and you need to figure out how to get better strategy and metrics and what you need to do for that. So my takeaway was I didn't realize that it was more of it's not like an ISO standard where it just gives you a checklist of things. It's more like hey, this is how the company shape up. I thought it was like that. I'd only actually read some of the the text. I hadn't read all the way down to the very bottom where the spider diagrams and everything show up. So they give you a nice way of diagramming everything. And I'm sure we'll go through this again at some point and discuss. Maybe we'll find somebody from Sigital who works with us and get them on and talk about it a little bit. So what was your takeaway, Mr. Betcher?
Well, they had a section on executive leadership, and they talked about how you should empower executives to lead the software security initiatives. Okay, and the reason for that is, well, when the effort is led by only, say, development managers, or even by the overarching security team in general. And I'm lumping in, software security and network security, compliance, and all that. You get mediocrity in your software security at best. When you put an executive in charge of the software security program, you gain accountability, and it's like a huge business endorsement, that you need, that green light to push change.
Yeah.
Right? So it really starts at the top in order to be successful.
Yeah, I'm imagining and you mentioned executive leadership. That's like management buy-in. We talk about management buy-in. Management has to be buying into this. Otherwise, you're kind of like a Sisyphus with the rock. Except you're pushing one rock up two hills. If you're in the bottom at the valley and you're trying to push it up to get management buy-in, you're totally neglecting the other side who actually is going to have to help you implement that, which would be the developers and your QA and your test folks. But if you go just up to the QA folks, they're going to push back and go, well, management is saying we're not having to do this. So if you can get management already bought in, that's, one less hill you're going to have to push your rock up.
Yeah. You found a bug? Well, put it in the bug tracking system. We got 10,000 more. So good luck.
Yeah.
Without that executive leadership, you're like you said, you're pushing that rock uphill.
Yep.
Or up the wrong hill, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was great. If you have any questions or thoughts or comments, or maybe you'd like to come on and discuss the BSIMM with us, please let us know. Our official podcast email is bds.podcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter for the podcast is @BreakSec. Mr. Betcher, how would people get a hold of you?
Yes, on Twitter, it's my last name, Betcher. BOETTCHER PWNED, Betcher Pwned.
Yeah, for the new year, you're going to be changing that, right? You can just call yourself the Betch or,
Dot.
Betcher.
How about just dot?
Dot Betcher.
Is that taken?
I don't know if Dot Betcher's taken. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Mine's a little shorter, only by a little bit. At Brian Brake, BryanBrake. We have an official Facebook page, about 11,000 people on there. If you want to join in to discussions and things that are going on there, we have a LinkedIn group, which admittedly we don't look at very often. We're sorry about that. We have a Patreon. If you find value in what we're giving you here, if it's just for CPEs or whatever, and you want to leave us a little tip, please feel free to leave us a little tip over there at Patreon. You can find us, just do a search for Breaking Down Security and Patreon on your Googles or your Bings or whatever it is you use. It's the week before Thanksgiving, so if you're a U.S. American here, please enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday and remember what you're thankful for. It could be a lot worse, especially with what's going on in the news. Mr. Betcher, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and we will talk to everybody real soon.
Bye-bye.
Later.